Hi everyone, in this short video I would like to briefly explain my solution to the IBM Open Science Prize 2022 problem, which was to quantum compute the ground state energy of a Kagome unit cell. My solution obtains the ground state energy that is within 1% relative error of the actual value. A 12-site lattice Kagome unit cell has 54 Hamiltonian terms, which should be measured on a circuit, a state preparation circuit, such that the average value of those 54 observables should be within 1% of the actual ground state energy, that's minus 18. The main strategy to achieve a very accurate ground state energy involves the use of what I call truncated ansatz. The basic idea is that we can possibly truncate the ansatz circuits to a subcircuit that is used to measure a given Hamiltonian term only. Not all the qubits and gates are involved in the measurement of the given Hamiltonian term. That means we can select a portion of a circuit for our given computation and the measurement of the Hamiltonian term under consideration. And this truncation significantly reduces the size of the circuits and reduces the number of qubits involved, especially the number of CNOTs and the number of readouts. Consequently, the smaller Hilbert space that we work with has proportionally lower noise. The other part of the strategy was to combine the exponential fit with the zero noise extrapolation noise mitigation scheme. The exponential fit helps push down the value of the mean value of an observable y, which in our case is the ground state energy. And it is more realistic because under complete depolarization, the mean value of an observable should approach zero. This is in contrast with the case of polynomial fit, as shown here as a linear curve fit function, which tend to extrapolate y to a higher value, and in this case it doesn't really ensure that y approaches zero under complete depolarization, and instead what we see here is that y may grow with the opposite sign. And I should point out that the exponential fit was really critical to further lower the ground state energy closer to the correct value. So in order to summarize the important components of the solution, first, ansatz. I have used ring ansatz, which will be discussed in the next few slides, that conveniently maps to the IBM Q Guadalupe heavy hex architecture and also to the topology of the Kagome lattice unit cell. The circuit has 48 parameters and it attains the ground state energy exactly minus 18 under noiseless condition by running the variational quantum eigensolver. On the real hardware, however, the relative error is in excess of 1%. An optimized version of ansatz, the truncated ring ansatz. The defining advantage of this ansatz is that it helps attain relative error which is less than 1%, and that will be discussed in the next few slides as well. NFT is the optimizer, and it converges to the lowest ground state energy value, that's minus 18, within 300 iteration. That's maximum iteration parameter. And on the real IBM Q Guadalupe chip, 2000 shorts are sufficient. We can achieve a more stable convergence when the optimizer NFT execution, once complete, is followed by the gradient descent. The noise mitigation scheme is the zero noise extrapolation with a global folding amplifier combined with the exponential fit. Summarizing the performance comparison between the two types of ansatz, I should point out that I found it much easier to run ring ansatz, the untruncated version with the custom VQE function provided by the IBM Q code template. However, the relative error was in excess of 1%. By contrast, the truncated ring ansatz was run with a custom estimator TRA function that is specifically designed to run with the circuit runner in order to circumvent lengthy queues of the Qiskit estimator. That was able to achieve minus 17.96 value of the ground state energy, which is within 1% relative error. And the second and the corresponding row shows the corresponding job IDs for your reference. So the ring and status circuit is shown here. The basic idea is to make a ring of non-commuting C-nodes like this. And in terms of its performance, as already indicated, here's the convergence graph starting with the random parameter values. When the convergence occurs, the optimal parameter values are given over here as well. If we want to achieve more stable conversion, that's the point beyond 400 iterations, you can apply gradient descent. On the real hardware, as shown here, the number of shots for 1000, although 2000 will also be sufficient, but for some reason the Qiskit VQE function, custom VQE function, reverts the number of shots to 4000. It's like a default, minimum default value. It looks like the case. And the other experimental setup, extrapolation, exponential, global folding amplifier, I was able to obtain around minus 17.17. With the help of ring and status, again, the main idea shown here is that we will always, we will actually customize circuits for each Hamiltonian term. So if there are 54 terms, then there are going to be 54 different truncated and status circuits. And here's an example of the truncated ring and status circuits derived from the untruncated version if we wish to measure a Hamiltonian term Z11, Z14. Hence, in this case, we shall delete the part of the circuit which does not contribute or does not affect the measurement of the Hamiltonian term, sufficiently reducing the size of the circuit as well as the size of the Hilbert space. And it turns out that the truncated ring status tend to halve the number of the C-nodes, and also the number of measurements are only 2 per circuit. By comparison, the performance of the truncated ring ansatz is much better. You can see on the graph shown on the left that the values are much closer to the target value of the ground state energy. The experimental settings are the same as those in the case of the untruncated ring ansatz. However, in this case, the relative error is less than 1%. At this point, I should remind that because this graph was obtained by 16 iterations of the NFT optimizer, those were run as circuit runner jobs, whose IDs are shown over here for your reference. The proposed ring ansatz accurately mirrors the topology of Kagome unit cells. So if we loop around the lattice sites and make a complete loop around the unit cell, we can see that in the circuit shown on the left, the C-nodes constituting the ring ansatz circuits also make a ring or a loop. And at the same time, these ansatz also map to the heavy hex architecture of the Guadalupe chip and of several other IBM Q quantum devices, which are different versions and expanded versions of the heavy hex architectures. Finally, I would like to show the scalability of ring ansatz for the calculation of ground state energy for the larger lattice. So in this case, the diagram on the right shows two Kagome unit cell lattice. And what's interesting is that the circuit shown on the left can be split into two parts. The upper part maps to the left unit cell, which can be separately optimized with the pre-calculated optimal parameter values as discussed before. The other half of the circuit, the lower half, maps to the Kagome unit cell shown, part of the Kagome unit cell on the right, whose parameters can be separately learned and optimized. As a result, I was able to attain the ground state energy, minus 27.23, which is not too far away from the target value. However, the relative error is slightly higher, which I believe can be reduced to an acceptable limit as part of my future research work. The corresponding values of the corresponding optimal parameter values of the lower half of the circuits are shown here. With that, I would like to conclude my presentation. Hopefully, you were able to learn a thing or two about the accurate quantum computation of the ground state energy of Kagome unit cells, some techniques of error mitigation, and designing low noise ansatz circuits. You can always drop me an email shown here, and I wish you best of luck and have a nice day. Thank you.